Do you ever load into what you hope's going to be a leisurely battleship game, only to see an enemy division of destroyers that you know is gunning specifically for you? Well, if you'd like to know how to smack those ships around and send them straight back to port, then stay tuned. Hello everybody, this is VannKraken, and welcome to World of Warships Legends Salvos, where we break down an important engagement or play within an overall World of Warships Legends battle. Today we're going to be focusing on the battleship Bayern. We recently did a meme-worthy clip of an engagement we had in this ship versus a Podvoisky division, and on deeper thought it actually merits some additional analysis on how you can actually use a battleship effectively to counter organized destroyer play. We're going to be focusing on three main things today: how our awareness, engagement, and finishing allows us to have a very successful result against this Podvoisky division and merit a unicorn achievement, for me at least, which was a double strike with our secondary batteries. All right, let's set this up by talking about our combatants head to head. First of all, I'm not going to be shy about saying that I love the Bayern. She's a tier 5 German battleship. And I really like her because she's a great combination between main battery guns that are definitely good enough to get the job done and not hard to aim and fire. Secondly, she's got a good secondary battery, which is the hallmark of the German battleship line. They get stronger and stronger as you go up to higher tiers and allow you to both play at a medium distance and get in and brawl effectively. Lastly, I like ships that have some mobility, and she has a good enough top speed, rudder shift, and turning circle to get in a knife fight in close quarters and get in and out of trouble using that mobility. So Bayern, in my opinion, great ship for new players and still fun for players who are experienced as well. Probably the best battleship at tier 5 in my personal opinion. So what makes this engagement meme worthy? If you've played the Russian destroyer line, you know that Russian destroyers at the low and mid tiers and even the higher tiers are fast and maneuverable. They like to come at you with quick strikes, and this foe division times 3 of Podvoisky's tier 4s was no exception. The Podvoisky will use its speed for sneak attacks. They'll have a strong torpedo loadout like the other Russian destroyers, but the big but is they're limited to a 4-kilometer range, so they have to rely on ambush tactics a lot of the time to get the job done with torpedoes. Otherwise, they can stand off at a distance and use quite workable main battery guns. So to be successful in any engagement, it's going to be really important that you know the characteristics of the ship that you're driving. So let's drill down a little bit deeper into Bayern to see what makes her tick and what makes her effective. From a survivability perspective, she has 19% torpedo damage reduction and decent armor. The armor scheme of the German battleships overall is strong, and Bayern reflects that at tier 5 versus her peers. That torpedo damage reduction will come into play in this battle. From an artillery perspective, really want to dial in on not just the main battery, 30-second reload time, and the HE shell damage especially will focus on a 4500 Alpha Strike with a 35% fire chance. On top of that main battery, it's really important to know that you have a good secondary armament protecting the bubble around your ship, again, within about 5.8 kilometers based on my setup. The reload time is relatively quick at 8.6 seconds. You have a maximum AP shell damage of 3700. Though you're not going to get those full pens against a destroyer. Just keep that in mind. But there are 10 secondary guns that are very effective, 150 millimeter guns to keep you safe in close quarters. Maneuverability. Her turning circle is 630 meters, which is not too bad against her tier 5 peers. And she's not a really high top speed ship, only 23 knots. But the rudder shift is actually lower than a lot of her peers, and that allows her to twist and turn just enough in close quarters, again, to use that effective main battery and second battery armament to get into scrapes and out of them and come out on top, which we'll see in a bit. And then lastly, concealment. It will come into play in this match as the match unfolds, as we take our initial positioning. We have an 11 kilometer detectability by air and 13 kilometer detectability by sea. So just bear in mind, you're going to be spotted from quite a long ways away, especially in an engagement when you're working with destroyers. You'll have to be cognizant that you definitely stick out. But the key factor in this is going to be our quick rudder shift, along with some of these other characteristics we'll talk about that helps us in knife fighting. So let's keep that in mind as we watch this engagement unfold. So as you progress in World of Warships Legends, you're going to see that it's just as important to know the statistics and characteristics of enemy ships as it is to know what the ship that you're driving brings to the table. So let's take a closer look at the tier for Podvoisky. She's a destroyer, so survivability-wise, she only has 11,700 hit points and her armor's thin. So we're going to want to slap her around with HE if we have any choice in the matter. It's going to do a lot more alpha strike damage and wreck her modules. Maneuverability is a hallmark of the Russian destroyer line. High maximum speed of 42 knots, probably one of the highest at tier. And a 4.1 second rudder shift, which is pretty quick to answer with regard to turns. Though, her turning circle's not great, 700 meters. It's actually more than Bayern, believe it or not. But let's keep in mind she's going to be a far more maneuverable ship than the battleship that we're driving. Concealment is not a great aspect of the Russian destroyers. Her detectability range by sea is 6.5 kilometers, and her detectability by air is 3.3 kilometers. So she's definitely not going to be as stealthy as a Japanese destroyer, for instance. So let's see how that comes into play in this engagement. And lastly, the other half of the Russian destroyer meme when they get close to you is a really impressive torpedo layout. You'll learn this as soon as the Dursky at tier 2, right? So she has 2 triple torpedo launchers that can deliver an alpha strike per torpedo of 14,400 damage. So if she gets 6 torpedo hits on you in a Bayern, you are dead. But those torpedoes only have a range of 4 kilometers, but with a pretty good top speed of 69 knots. So this triple division of Podvoiskys can put out 18 torpedoes if they're able to coordinate their attack. So now that we've discussed the ships that make up the heart of this engagement, let's talk about the battle itself. So first of all, our deployment. We've spawned into the C flank on straight, which is a north-south map in domination mode. And generally it's best if half of our team were to split up and take A and the other half to take C. So that means I want to stick at C. In a battleship, I don't want to try to drive all the way across to the other side at A just because I like that cap better. And I probably don't want to go middle because I don't want to give away the cap at C for free. And I want to support my destroyer and my cruiser and try to prolong their life as much as possible. There's 5 destroyers per side, and there's a Podvoisky division like we've talked about. So we know those guys are running a meme division. They're all together. They're all running the same ship. They're fast. They have a great big torpedo loadout, and there's only 2 battleships. So we know we are the hunted in this situation. So we really have to beware torpedo soup in both the A and C cap if we had lined up on either side. So we want to support, but not be foolish about pushing into the C cap. Again, I want to get close enough to provide close support of my destroyer and cruiser, but I don't want to enter that cap boundary. At this point, based on the way ships are aligned at B, it doesn't look like they're necessarily coming straight away to help me. So again, I'm going to take a conservative position, hold any push through C if I can, and keep my buddies there alive as long as possible. As we track the actual battle itself, let's break it down into 3 phases, the first of which is awareness. So what do we already know? Before the bell rings for the match to start, we've looked at our team rosters and analyzed their composition. So we know there's 5 destroyers per side. We know there's a 3-ship Podvoisky division on the other team and that they're going to run together as a pack. And we are going to be the hunted, not the hunters, in the initial part of the match. Secondly, based on how things are moving, we've determined our deployment and see that a left flank spawn location is going to lean us towards supporting the C cap, but staying outside the cap because we know in the north-south orientation of Strait, those DDs have island cover inside those channels and we have minimal room to maneuver, so we don't want to go all the way into the cap. At just 1 minute into the battle, we recognize that we're being detected, and not just by the battleship we're firing at from a distance. We're being spotted in between the islands when there's no enemy ship visible, except for that battleship which is back behind an island and can't detect us. So there has to be at least one destroyer that's spotting us from either inside or near the cap. And as we see it start to turn, we see the indication that there are 4 enemy destroyers in the sea cap. We see them visually straight away with their ships and indicators in our visual detection range, and we can see 4 different destroyer icons active inside the sea cap. So now, how do we counter this? We may be up against 1, 2, 3, or 4 destroyers. How do we sustain and prolong this engagement as a battleship and just don't turn into a meme devastating strike for the enemy group? The scene has been set and the awareness phase is over. Phase 2 begins the full-blown engagement. So let's follow our battle clock timing on the left-hand side and see what we decide to do. At 1:52 into the game, we take evasive action. We maneuver away from the sea cap by accelerating and turning. Speeding up is going to help us turn out, and we can use the islands as shields from the first torpedo salvos. They won't be able to travel through those islands, but we'll have to be aware of them coming through the lanes. At 2 minutes, we decide we're going to basically book away from sea. We're going to stretch the engagement out into open water and kite away from the cap, which is a tactic you can use a lot in cruisers, where you get out into open water, use your maneuverability, turn your guns back on your target, and in this case, I want to get out into an area where I can maneuver freely and where the DDs have to come out into open water and be robbed of their smoke that they've put into sea and the islands themselves, which provide them cover. At 2:18, we activate our secondary booster, and we turn our main guns back to our left-hand or port side because we see the destroyers trying to make a book to that side of our ship, at least several of them. So now we've accelerated out, we've kited away, and we are taking an attack posture. Even though we're maneuvering away from the sea cap, we are still getting ready to get on the attack basically while we're maneuvering away. So we're going to use our gun lock and zoom out feature, which is my left bumper, to turn our main guns and get a bigger picture at the same time of where the enemy destroyers are maneuvering to. And then lastly, at 2 minutes and 28 seconds, we're on the full-blown offensive. We're switching our ammo type to high explosive and getting ready to open fire with our main batteries, and then we're using basically our front guns on one side and our rear guns on another side of the ship to address simultaneous attacks from 2 of the 3 Podvoiskys in their division. So we're going to describe the third phase of this engagement as finishing. So I was a longtime soccer player and youth soccer coach currently. And finishing in soccer is literally just when you have the ball in front of the opponent's goal, are you able to effectively score it? So in this case, what we've done is draw out the enemy destroyers into the open. So the first thing I have to do is continue to evade. So at 2 minutes and 58 seconds into the battle, I am trying to minimize the torpedo impact. I run into a teammate who goes in front of me and I lose some of my speed and wind up taking 1 hit. But all in all, we evaded any major damage. There could have been 18 torpedoes coming in from those 3 Podvoiskys. We did dodge 2 at close quarters, only took 1. That I consider a big win, and we're able to fix that damage really quickly. Then at 3 minutes and 5 seconds, we are trying to finish. We are in full-blown engagement of the Podvoiskys now with our main batteries with HE loaded, high explosive loaded. So we switched our ammo type as the destroyers went behind the island, and as we switched our guns to get HE in the barrels, that will do full damage, full alpha damage if we get a hit, and it will wreck modules, while armor piercing rounds will only do an overpen, which is probably only about 1/3 the damage of what the HE rounds will do. At 3:19, we're again still kind of kiting away from 2 Podvoiskys, one that's engaging us on each side, and we're using a split the difference kind of angle to get our secondaries from both sides in view of those DDs on either side so they can fire simultaneously. At the same time, we're using our front main batteries on one side and our rear main batteries on the other, so we're really maxing out our firepower by, again, splitting the difference between the courses of the two destroyers. At 3:32, guys, it is pretty much done. It's game over. We get a Podvoisky double strike. This is something that I've rarely, if ever, done. 2 secondary battery kills in 4 seconds. We've weakened both those destroyers with main battery HE, enough so that our secondaries can finish them off just 4 seconds apart. And when we look at 3 minutes and 32 seconds, we look up at the team rosters, there's 4 destroyers killed between my Bayern and my teammates in the C-cap. Effectively, that spells game over in this situation. About 6 minutes more of mop-up duty, and we finish with a solid win. Before we head to our after-action report, let's watch the match back in real time with live match commentary. My least favorite map in a battleship. I don't like this orientation, the north-south orientation of straight, kind of forcing you into those narrow channels to secure caps in battleships. But we're going to go ahead and support our cruiser here at sea and hope he doesn't go in too deep. Especially since he's in Nuremberg. I'm going to ask him to... Don't show your broadside to the Bayern or you won't live. So I'm actually going to open fire and get the Bayern targeting me, hopefully. Yeah, I would say it is my least favorite map in any ship as well. Again, the only time I actually thought it was halfway fun was in ranked, where the caps were lined up right straight down the middle, where there's more space in the middle. A little more room for brawling in there. Okay, that first shot was abysmal on my part. Just kind of making a smart play by not going at full speed. I'm going to alter my speed, slow down, bow in, try to throw off his shot. There we go. We'll take that. So we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to try to alter speed and course. Now he's fired. We'll speed back up. He overshot a little bit. Oh, and there's a destroyer. I gotta get out of this area. And this is why I hate this map in a battleship. Execute as tight a turn as we can. If we can stay within the corner of that island, likely torpedoes were not launched. Gotta activate my buff to my secondaries. Couple hits. Let's... Oh, dude, don't block me, please. That just bled a lot of our speed off while we're trying to get away from torpedoes. It's kind of a bummer. Oh my. Yeah, that just screwed us pretty badly. You should run in front and take the... that's the destroyer. Our cruiser really screwed me. Big time. We were flooding. Okay, gotta try to consider turning out on this battleship now on the pod. Come on, secondaries.
We've sunk an enemy destroyer.
Come on. Oh!
Enemy destroyer founder.
Oh, the close quarters double strike. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I've ever done that before. Holy moly, that was like Starsky and Hutch episode. All right, guys, as I said in the video, I was a little excited, just a second to catch my breath. In this after action report, first thing we hit on is it was a very rapidly developing scenario. Everything happened super fast. Just 2 minutes into the battle, we've already had to diagnose the enemy roster versus ours, where we deploy, and what strategy we're going to initially take. 3.5 minutes in, the engagement is effectively over. We do some mop-up duty on a cruiser and battleship, but their team is at such a massive disadvantage. The game is pretty much done. But in that initial engagement, the destroyers knew they had a big speed advantage. They know they have a massive Alpha Strike loadout of torpedoes, and they know they have the maneuverability advantage over us as the BB. So they see us only as food. If we can turn the tables, it'll be fantastic. How do we do that? We do that by reading and recognizing the situation. And for me, I have to use my brain to plan a little bit ahead. I have to know where my options are. So first of all, I go to that flank. If we overmatch the flank, if we have a numerical advantage, we can feel our way in, inflict some damage, push through, cap the cap, and put the other team into a crossfire in the rear of the map. But if we are outnumbered as we were, if we see 4 destroyers pop up in that cap, we have to take a different tack. We have to move away from that cap, draw the enemy destroyers out, and bring them out into an area where they will be on our terms. And that allows us to make the decision to play to our ship's strengths. So out in the open water, those Podvoiskys will be more visible. They won't be able to use the smoke they lay down in the islands as cover. And we'll be able to use our relative agility to dodge all but one of the torpedoes and bring our secondary batteries onto more than one of the enemy destroyers at the same time after we've softened them up with HE fire. And ultimately the result, we knock out 2 of the 3 Podvoiskys in 4 seconds. A teammate knocks out the 3rd, and we kill the other enemy DD at that cap. 4 DD kills in 3.5 minutes. The game is effectively over. And in our successful after action report, we get to boast badges. I love badges. A close quarters ×2, and a double strike. I mean, how insanely cool is that? Again, I don't know that I've ever pulled that off in 4 years of World of Warships, and this is the kind of thing that makes this game so stinking fun. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully the next time you run up against some destroyers in your battleship, you'll have some thoughts about how you can counter them and come out on top. If you appreciated what you saw, please drop a like below or perhaps subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can follow my live streams here on YouTube, which are also on Twitch. You can follow there as well. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us, and I am VannKraken. I am out.